Let's talk about a strange little paradox, one that you might actually know all too well. It's this: how can a highly intelligent mind, the very thing we see as a superpower for solving problems, sometimes become the biggest roadblock to just making a decision?
You've probably seen it, right? Maybe you have that brilliant friend who can explain quantum physics but takes an hour to choose what to order for dinner. Or hey, maybe that's you, staring at a dozen different brands of olive oil, completely frozen. It's a real thing, and it makes you wonder, why does a more powerful brain sometimes lead to total paralysis?
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll get into the link between intelligence and what's known as choice paralysis. Then, we'll peek under the hood at the neuroscience of the super-efficient brain. After that, we're going to bust a major myth about IQ and rationality, and we'll wrap up with some actual strategies for getting a handle on your own mind.
All right, first up, let's unpack this psychological trap at the very center of the problem, the overthinking that literally stops you in your tracks.
This has a name, and it's called analysis paralysis. It's when your brain opens so many tabs on a single decision that the whole system just freezes. No action is taken, and you're stuck. You see this all the time in high-pressure jobs, sure, but it also sneaks into our everyday lives, turning a simple choice into this massive, stressful event. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, because it kind of boils down to two different styles of decision-making. People with highly analytical minds often become what's called a maximizer. They're not just looking for a good choice. They are on a quest for the single, absolute best choice out of all possible options. Then you have the satisfizer, who just looks for an option that's good enough. And as you'll see, that approach can be a secret weapon.
And check this out. Here's the paradox in black and white. One study found that college grads who were maximizers actually got jobs with starting salaries that were 20% higher. Sounds like a win, right? Well, here's the catch. They also reported feeling way less satisfied with those jobs. So they win on paper, but they're miserable in their own heads, constantly wondering if they could have done better.
And this table just lays it all out so clearly. The maximizer hunts for that perfect outcome, and yeah, they often get objective success, but it comes at a huge psychological cost. We're talking high regret and constant anxiety. Meanwhile, the satisficer accepts good enough. They might not get the absolute top-tier result every single time, but what they do get is way more valuable: peace of mind and, actual happiness.
So we've touched on the psychology of it, but what's actually happening on a biological level? Let's dive into the neuroscience, because the way a highly intelligent brain is wired is a huge piece of this puzzle.
Okay, get ready for this because it's completely the opposite of what you'd think. It's called the neural efficiency hypothesis. You'd imagine a genius brain lighting up like a Christmas tree, firing on all cylinders, right? Nope. Research shows that a more intelligent brain is actually a more efficient brain. It uses less energy and fewer resources to solve the same problem.
So the key takeaway here is that it's not about just having more raw brain power or working harder.
It's about working smarter, with a kind of metabolic elegance. Think of it like a finely tuned race car engine. It produces way more horsepower, but uses less fuel than a standard car. A gifted brain is like that. It can tackle incredibly complex problems with the same amount of biological energy that another brain might need for just a simple task. And this efficiency unlocks totally different ways of thinking. Most of us think in a pretty linear step-by-step way. But gifted minds can do what's called skip thinking, where they just leap over several logical steps because they see the pattern. And at the highest level, they use meta-thinking, which is like a whole other operating system for the brain. So, what on earth is meta-thinking? Well, it's the ability to zoom out and think about your own thinking process. It's being able to see connections between ideas that seem totally unrelated to anyone else. It's about instantly getting to the core of a super complex idea and building this incredible mind matrix, this massive interconnected web where every new piece of information plugs into thousands of others. Okay, but here's the big twist. If these brains are so powerful and efficient, why do brilliant people still make really bad, sometimes totally irrational, decisions? It's time to explore why a high IQ is absolutely no guarantee against flawed thinking.
This is probably one of the biggest myths about intelligence out there. We see someone with a high IQ and we just assume they're a Vulcan, Flawless logic, perfect choices. But is that really the case?
The answer, backed by tons of research, is a huge, resounding no. A high IQ does not, I repeat, does not guarantee rational thinking.
In fact, sometimes all that intelligence just gives someone a more creative way to justify their own bad ideas. They are two completely different skills.
And there's actually a name for this, which is just fantastic: disrationality. The psychologist who coined it, Keith Stanovich, explains it like this. Think of your IQ as your computer's hardware, the raw processing power. But rationality? That's the software. It's the logic, the rules, the knowledge you've installed. You can have a supercomputer for a brain, but if your software is buggy or missing, you're going to get garbage results.
And Stanovich says it's usually one of two things. First, we're all cognitive misers. Our brains are fundamentally lazy and want to save energy, so they default to quick, gut-feeling thoughts. Second, we can have mind-wear gaps. That means you literally don't have the mental tools, like a solid understanding of statistics or logic, to make a rational call. Even worse, your mindware can be contaminated with bad ideas, which a high IQ then gets really good at defending.
And as Stanovich himself says, this is the fatal flaw in how we think about intelligence. Your typical IQ test is great at measuring your brain's processing speed and memory, but it doesn't test for any of this crucial mindware. It doesn't check if your software is any good.
Okay, so what can you actually do about all this? If any of this sounds familiar, if you're living with one of these high-powered, overactive brains, how do you manage it? Well, this last section is a kind of user manual.
First, let's just get this out of the way. Telling a highly analytical person to just stop thinking so much is like telling a cheetah to just jog. It's completely useless advice. That's not how the system is built. This mental overexcitability, as researchers call it, doesn't come with an off switch.
So instead, the real key is to manage and channel that amazing energy. You can practice analytical mindfulness, basically using your smart brain to observe itself without judgment. You can literally schedule worry time to put boundaries on it. Try practicing being a satisficer on small things, just to build that muscle. Find your true peers, other people who get your intensity. And maybe most importantly, point that powerful analytical beam at things that actually matter. Solve problems, innovate, create.
And that really is the heart of it all. This isn't about trying to be less of who you are or wishing your brain worked differently. It's about understanding how your own unique wiring works, both its strengths and its challenges, and then learning how to pilot it effectively. The goal is not to think less, it's to think better.
So, I'll leave you with this to think about. We've seen how this incredible analytical engine can lead to stress and indecision. But we also know it's the very thing that drives discovery and deep understanding. So, the question is, how do you choose to see it? Is your analytical power a burden you have to carry, or is it your greatest asset, waiting to be aimed?